صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Thank you all very much for joining us again for another night of Muharram Majalis 2020 between Leeds Muslim Youth Group and Baab-Ul-Ilm Leeds. As always, we're very honoured to have with us in the second 5 nights By Shaykh Ali Raza, talking to us about companions and companionship. And we are honoured to have him for another night today. We'll start the program off with the recitation of the Holy Quran and Ziyat Ashara by Brother Kurush with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa a'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Sabbih isma rabbikal a'la alladhi khalaqa fasawwa walladhi qaddara fahada والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى وينسلك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا خيرة الله ومن خيرته. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصيين. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. يا أبا عبد الله لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت وعظمت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل الإسلام وجلت وعظمت مصيبتك في السماوات على جميع أهل السماوات. فنرى الله أمة أسست أساس الظلم والجور عليكم أهل البيت ولأن الله أمة رفعتكم عن مقامكم وأزالتكم عن مراتبكم التي رتبكم الله فيها ولأن الله أمة قتلتكم ولأن الله الممهدين لهم بالتمكين من قتالكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم ومن أشيائهم وأتباعهم وأوليائهم يا أبا عبد الله إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم إلى يوم القيامة. ولعن الله آل زياد وآل مروان ولعن الله بني أمية قاتبة ولعن الله ابن مرجانة ولعن الله عمر بن سعد ولعن الله شمرا ولعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتنقبت لقتالك. بأبي أنت وأمي لقد عظم مصابي بك فأسأل الله الذي أكرم مقامك وأكرمني بك أن يرزقني طلب ثارك مع إمام منصور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله اللهم اجعلني عندك وجيها بالحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة يا أبا عبد الله. إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بموالاتك وبالبراءة ممن قاتلك ونصب لك الحرب وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس الظلم والجور عليكم وأبرأ إلى الله وإلى رسوله ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانا وجرى في ظلمه وجاره عليكم وعلى عشائكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم وأتقرب إلى الله ثم إليكم بموالاتكم وموالاة وليكم وبالبراءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحرب وبالبراءة من شيوعهم وأتباعهم. مني سلم لمن سالكم وحرب لمن حاربكم وولي لمن والاكم وعدو لمن عاداكم. فأسأل الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة وأن يثبتني عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم من الله وأن يرزقني طلب ثاري مع إمام هدى ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم. وأسأل الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني المصاب بكم أفضل ما يؤتي مصابا مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رزيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقام هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن آكلة الأكباد اللعين وابن اللعين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله في كل موطن وموقف وقف فيك نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية عليهم منك اللعنة أبدا الآبدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضاعف عليهم اللعنة منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالموالاة لنبيك ولنبيك عليك وعليه السلام. اللهم الآن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم نعم الإصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم بين العالمين، وابدأ به أولا ثم الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم لا يزيد خامسا ولعن عبيد الله بن زياد وثمر رجانه وعمر بن سعد وشمرا وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مصابهم، الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود، وثبتني قدم عندك على الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا مهجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى اللهم على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Ahsant. Thank you very much, Brother Kurush, for your recitation. And now it's time for By Shaykh Ali Raza. Don't forget that you can submit your questions online via Menti confidentially if you follow the link below, and inshallah we will be answering them later. Tonight's lecture is entitled Close Companions of Ahl al-Bayt. And with that, we'd like to welcome By Shaykh with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين وهو خير ناصر ومعين. عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا بأبي عبد الله الحسين. We give our condolences to all mu'mineen on the sacrifice of Al-Hussein. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد, we spoke yesterday on a few companions of the Prophet, and some of these companions had an amazing life. The way they went through what they went through, the journey that they went through, their inquisitive nature, and the outcome that occurred because of that inquisitive nature, the outcome of that yearning for God. So these are the nights that we look at Al-Hussein alayhi salam, we look at his companions, we look at the Ahlul Bayt companions, and we try and embody their characteristics. So yesterday we saw the two characters, Salman and Abu Dhar, and how they went on their own journey. Salman, coming from a Zoroastrian background, how he yearned for the truth, he found the truth in different angles and different ways. He became a Christian, and then he finally embraced Islam. Abu Dhar, similar journey in his own way, and it's very important to note this, that we all have our own journeys. We all need to recognize our own defects, our own needs, our own points of improvement. Because as the narration mentions, Man arafa nafsahu, whoever knows his own self. You're not concerned about the self of somebody else, of your friend, of fulan or fulana. You're concerned about your own self. You should be concerned about your own self. You should be concerned about discovering your own self. Salman had his own journey. Abu Dhar had his own journey. The different companions of the Ahlul Bayt had their own journey. And this is it. The journey is unique to all of us. As mentioned yesterday, we all have different tendencies within ourselves. We all have different things within ourselves that we need to improve. The first step is to recognize where to start. And this is what these individuals did. That they actually strove, but they recognized that they had certain areas which they could improve on. There are certain areas which they could build on. There are certain areas that they could implement. And this is it. The companions had their own unique journeys, and they were very human-like, just as we are. They would engage in fights, they would engage in quarrels, they would have family members dispute with them, they would have friends break up with them. So that's a very similar to our life from one angle. From another angle, we all have our own unique journeys, and hence we need to discover what we want to improve on and how we need to improve on. Let us make a resolution, at least this Muharram. We speak about the maqatil of Imam Hussein. We speak about the sacrifices of Imam Hussein and the Ahlul Bayt and Lady Zainab. Let us make a resolution that this Muharram, that we try to improve just one thing that we should improve this Muharram and become better individuals. Inshallah, may Allah accept that intention from us. So today, I want to look at a few incidents at the time of the Prophet and the Imams, the Ahlul Bayt, and how the companions reacted in that situation. Starting off is the Battle of Badr. Now, we know Surah 2 verse 249 mentions this, كَمْ مِنْ فِئَةٍ قَلِيلَةٍ غَلَبَتْ فِئَةً كَثِيرَةً بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. How many, a small number of people has overcome a large number of people. Badr, 313 individuals overcome a huge army. And for those who enjoy watching movies, you've seen that movie 300, how these Spartans are able to overcome these huge Persian army, or at least inflict them with huge losses. Likewise, this verse was revealed with regard to Talut and Jalut. Look at the Quran. Talut is now sent to fight Jalut. Jalut, Goliath, huge individual, huge army. And Jalut is in a low number, right? Talut rather. So what happens is that he has trust in Allah. And this is it. You look at the psychology of what's happening. As soon as we lose hope, what happens? And I was thinking about this, that, you know, when I go cycling, for example, I'm cycling up a hill, and I think about the hill. What a big hill this is. It's so far away. My mind starts to chatter. As my mind starts to chatter, I think, you know, let me just come off the bike and walk until the top of the hill. You may have experienced this. My body, on the other hand, has the ability. It can go if I push it. So this is something that we need to be very aware of, our mind and the chatter that is going on. You see, Imam Ali, for example, in the battlefield, he would tell his soldiers that when you go into the battlefield, look at the end of the army. Aim for that end of the army. You're going to attack the end. What's he doing? He's reinforcing psychologically within them that you have a great purpose. You can do a lot. You have lots of potential. Don't think that you can't. Think that you can. And once you have this attitude of you can, then you become like the Ahlul Bayt, that in all the difficulties that they went through, they had this attitude of can do. And it's very powerful. So this story, this verse, the Battle of Badr, teaches us, and many other battles. You look at Al-Hussein, right? You look at Lady Zainab, she could have given up hope. She could have, I mean, if I and you are in that situation and our entire family is massacred, our children are here, women are here, what would we have done? How would we have reacted? Would we have given up hope? Would we have just submitted? Yet Lady Zainab alayhi salam doesn't give up hope. She continues. She battles on. She still understands that she has a mission and she must carry it out. So there is an attitude that we need to adopt to become Hussein, that of a winning attitude. We can live in this world, we can enjoy this world, and we should have a vision. We should want to achieve the best. We should aspire to be the best. As the narration of the Imam goes, Kun fi dunyak ka'annaka ta'ishu abada. Be in this world as though you're going to live forever. Aspire. Do whatever you can. Do the best you can. وَكُنْ فِي آخِرَتِكَ كَأَنَّكَ تَمُوتُ غَدًا. Be in the hereafter as though you're going to pass away tomorrow. There's a balance. So, coming back to the companions, they are in the Battle of Badr. They are few in number. Allah reveals some verses to give them ease. And He tells them that don't worry, that you can do it. The Prophet motivates his individuals. So the companions go through this phase, and like we go through phases of losing despair and losing hope and despairing, likewise the Prophet's companions also went through this, and they needed to psych themselves up. Now again, I appreciate that everybody is different and everybody's strength lies different in a different area, but the main thing is that we need to recognize what we can improve on and what we can build on. So the companions of the Prophet go through these different battles, and as they go through these different battles, they learn more about themselves. In Uhud, a few companions leave the place that they were supposed to stand, and that results in huge loss of life. In Khandak, we see the character, as we mentioned yesterday, the Prophet consulted them. They were like brothers. They came together, they assisted each other. They were able to do what they could do because of this cohesion that they built. In Khaybar, they come to this huge fortress, and one may think that how will we even penetrate this fort? However, they persisted, they were resolute, they stood firm, and eventually they were able to overcome. So as the Quran talks about these different instances, they are moments for us to take lesson from. Another very interesting instance from the life of the Prophet is the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. The Prophet goes with a few companions towards Makkah to carry out the pilgrimage. He's stopped by the Makkans. The Prophet sends an envoy to the Makkans. He sends Uthman, according to certain narrations, because of Uthman's connections with the Makkans. Uthman takes a long time coming back. So the Prophet and the companions, they make a pledge. As Allah says, لَقَدْ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِذْ يُبَايِعُونَكَ تَحْتَ الشَّجَرَةِ. Allah was pleased with the mu'mineen when they came and they pledged under the tree, right? And Allah knew what was in their heart, and Allah sent peace upon their heart. They had this resolute nature that we are going to stand by you and we won't separate, right? So this is something that we can take from, to stand firm, to stay firm, to be resolute and stand by your principles. What happened after that is that they came, the Makkans came, and they brought about a certain treaty, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. The companions were enraged. They said, this is not in our favor. How can we carry out this treaty? However, the Prophet had foresight and he had vision. And this is the thing, that sometimes we lose the bigger picture and we engage in small battles. And I don't mean physical battles, but engaging your energy in things that aren't necessary. There's a bigger picture that we need to look at. So the Prophet, in this short period of time, he is able, because of this treaty of Hudaybiyah, he is able to go and spread Islam, and Islam spreads like a wildfire because of that peace treaty. He saw that. He had that vision, and he knew that what peace could do for them. So this is a similar story that one can look at is, for example, in history, is that the Greeks, they despised, at a certain stage in time, they despised autocracy, that one person rules everybody. However, there was a ruler who got so much power, and he, despite being in a sort of democracy, he was able to consolidate a lot of power. What happened there is that these individuals started plotting against him, the members of Senate, etc., and they ended up killing him. But the consequence of that wasn't democracy, it was autocracy, which is ironic. So sometimes peace is a good thing. Peace is something that allows people to flourish. Peace is something that brings about that momentum of goodness. And the Prophet saw this. He had this vision. And likewise, in our own selves, in our own lives, we need to recognize what are our visions. What do we want to achieve? Now, of course, we're talking about the Prophet and his prophetic life and the community, but it has to start somewhere within ourselves. What do we want to achieve in life? How can we achieve it? How can we be Husseini? Going back to the prophetic life, we see in the next slide that the conquest of Makkah, the Prophet, after this Treaty of Hudaybiyah, Islam spreads so vastly. He has now a large number of people following him. He takes a huge army. Some report it to be 10,000. Now he takes his army and he goes towards Makkah. However, as you know, and as you've seen in many of these series and these films, they are spies. And these spies go towards the Makkans to report that there is a big, large army coming towards Makkah. The Prophet gets wind of this, and he sends his close companions to catch this spy. They catch the spy and bring that spy back. The Prophet then goes carefully, and they light up so many fires next to Makkah, just before the entrance, that it looks like a huge army is coming. What happens is that the Makkans get scared. They realize that there's a huge army. Who could it be? And they don't have information prior to that. They think it's probably one of the nearby tribes that's going to attack. However, as Abu Sufyan goes closer, he realizes it's the Makkans. He is captured, and he is told to embrace Islam. The Prophet then enters Makkah. Now I ask you the question. If somebody has mocked you, has made fun of you, has caused you all this difficulty, and then when you have the opportunity to take your revenge, or even put them down, what would you do? What did the Prophet do? Some of his companions were saying, Al-Yawm, Yawmul Malhama. Today is the day of bloodshed. The Prophet looks at them and says, no, Al-Yawm, Al-Yawmul Marhama. Today is the day of mercy. Today is the day we will forgive everybody who's done everything. Imagine how powerful forgiveness is. He enters Makkah. He says, whoever goes to this place, whoever stays in their house will be safe. And he does an amazing thing. He forgives all of them. He says, Antumul yawm tulaqa. Today you are free people. Despite all the difficulty and all the harm and all that you've committed, all that you've done to me, today I forgive you. And by doing that, he softened these people's hearts. He made them soft towards them. We see something similar to Imam Ali in the Battle of Siffin. Imam Ali is fighting Muawiyah. Muawiyah's army gets hold of the Furat, the river Euphrates. The river Euphrates is a long river, goes to Karbala and also where they were. So they get hold of the water supplies, Muawiyah's army. And Muawiyah's army prevents Imam Ali's army from getting water. Imam Ali's army attacks, gets hold of the water. What does he do there? If it was me and you, and if it was a battle, we could have easily starved off the enemy. But Imam says, no, give them water. Give their horses water. Water is this right for everybody. And by doing that action, he touched the hearts of individuals close to Muawiyah. And they said, if this is Ali ibn Abi Talib's actions, we want to be part of it. And this is it, that, at the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, people came and criticized the Prophet, companions, close companions of the Prophet. How did the Prophet react in that situation? Did he shut them down? Did he exile them? Did he put them in a prison after that? No, he engaged with them. He had discussion with them. He allowed them to have a difference of opinion, and he encouraged that. We see in the lives of the Imams also. Imam Ali, when he was a caliph, right? People would come and insult him. Would he put them in prison? No. Would he exile them? Would he punish them? No, he'd reciprocate with goodness. And by doing that, he won them over. Today, nowadays, unfortunately, in our societies, when people get power, what happens is that they want to shut any dissenting voices. This isn't the way the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt acted. They encouraged difference of opinion, of course, within the remit of good akhlaq. And even if it was in a bad akhlaq, they reciprocated. They themselves reciprocated with good akhlaq. And that brought about softening of the hearts of these individuals. Today, unfortunately, throughout the world, throughout Muslim countries, if anybody stands up and criticizes the leader, they get thrown in jail. Whereas, quite surprisingly, or quite ironically rather, in non-Muslim countries, you have every right to criticize the leader of that country, the ruling party of that country. Today in Britain, we're able to criticize the Prime Minister and his party. Very freely, very openly, we have that right. The Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt also encouraged that criticism and critique. That brought about self-checks, brought about growth. It brought about the opportunity for the Prophet to convince these individuals. The Prophet didn't go about cursing these individuals and maligning, putting them to a side. No, he brought them towards him. He spoke to them in a nice way, and that won them over. And this is something that we need to learn from. It's very difficult. Somebody comes to your face and insults your family. It would be very difficult to do what the Ahlul Bayt did, but it's something that we should learn from. We look at the life of Imam Hassan, right? As we go on, that Imam Hassan is now engaging in a battle with Muawiyah. He takes, according to certain reports, 40,000 men towards fighting Muawiyah. He takes these individuals, and some of them are very close companions to him. But as he is going, he sends a vanguard of around 12,000 men to go to a certain area. And as they go to this certain area, they attack Muawiyah's army, and Muawiyah realizes that by force he is not able to overcome them. So he plays some tricks. So he goes to the commander of this vanguard and says that, look, me and Al-Hassan have made a peace treaty. If you join my army, I will make you a high-ranking soldier. But if you join after the peace treaty, you'll just be an ordinary soldier. He bought him over. And this was Ubaydullah ibn Abbas, a close companion of Imam Hassan. And according to some narrations, he was a cousin of the Imam. So this also happens. So this, you recognize it within yourself. Is this happening in myself? Would I be bought over? Do I have the strength? Do I have the resolution, this resolve? Am I able to stand up for the wrong? If not, what is it that I can improve on? So Imam Hassan's army by the tricks of Muawiyah, he's not able to engage in battle. You go on, Imam Hussein alayhi salam. What happens? And it happened in Imam Hassan's army. It happened in Imam Ali's army. When the Khawarij at Siffin, they didn't use their intellect, right? According to certain narrations, Imam Ali was just 2 arms away from Muawiyah's tent. But this group, the Khawarij, saw that the Quran was being put up on spears. What did they do? They started chanting out, La hukma illa lillah. That there is no rule except Allah. They saw the Quran and said, we can't fight the Quran. Very simpletons, very simple-minded individuals. Didn't use their brain. Imam Ali says, kalimatun. That these are words that they say. Yurad bihal haq. That they want truth, but they are missing the point. These are words that have truth within it, but they are utilizing them in a wrong way. So, Imam Ali was so close to achieving what he wanted to achieve, but certain people close to him went against him, as we will see in the coming nights. Imam Hassan likewise. Imam Hussein, on his way towards Karbala, he goes to Kufa. He sends letters to them. They send letters to him. They send loads of letters towards him. And he goes towards Kufa. He sends Muslim as a emissary of his, and Muslim gets killed because they left him. Comes back to that psychology of Badr. If you take a psychology and a mentality of a victor, you can win. If you take the mentality of a loser, anybody and everybody can scare you away, and you're a loser regardless of how many people you have in that army. Real loss and winning starts over here and here. This is what the companions of Imam Hussein taught us. Now, in Imam Hussein's journey in the opposite army, we see individuals who used to recite the Quran, who used to pray Salah, they used to do all these things. But yet, some of them realized that Al-Hussein is right, but they were scared. They had this mob mentality, and sometimes we fall into it. You know, they did these certain experiments that they went into a GP surgeon, and they planted actors within a GP surgery. So what happened was that they told these actors to just stand up and sit down. So randomly, when this bell rang, these actors all stood up and sat down. Now, one person in that GP's surgery was not an actor. So all around, he saw these individuals standing up and sitting down. So he got shocked. After a while, what happened was this individual also started standing up and sitting down without knowing why he's standing up and sitting down. One by one, they did this experiment. They removed an actor and replaced that individual with a real person who doesn't know what's going on. Eventually, the room was empty of actors, and they were all genuine people who didn't know what's going on. But whenever the bell rang, they stood up and sat down. So this is the mob psychology that psychologists also refer to and investigate. What happens sometimes is when many people are doing something, we tend to want to follow that. It's a natural response of, for example, when birds fly, all of the birds fly. But we as human beings are bestowed with intellect. We are able to discern. You look at Hur's struggle, right? Hur knows what's going on. On the last day, he is walking, and they ask him, Hur, what's going on? You are the bravest of us. He says, كَأَنِّي أَرَى نَفْسِي بَيْنَ الْجَنَّةِ وَالنَّارِ. I see as though myself, I am between heaven and hell. He went against the mob. He went against this mob psychology. It's difficult to do, but sometimes it's necessary. And this is what the Ahlul Bayt teaches us, that we need to use our intellect, we need to stand up, we need to reflect, we need to look within ourselves. Now, there are many other companions of the Imams, of the Ahlul Bayt that we can talk about. We look at Kumail, we look at Maytham al-Tammar, we look at Abu Hamza al-Thumali. All these different companions had something in common. They all had this love of God. They loved God unqualifiedly. They had this immense love for God and for their Imams. They would give everything for the sake of Allah. How does one reach this stage? How does one recognize that everything he has is for Allah? Well, according to the narrations, we have this, that if you want to get proximity to God, recognize that everything that you have isn't yours, that we're here temporarily, we're here for a short period of time, that today you're here, tomorrow you're gone. As the Quran says, إِنَّمَا هَذِهِ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا لَعِبٌ وَلَهْوٌ. That the life of this world is just a play and a sport. You know, today we are here, tomorrow we're gone. We see people coming, we see people going. We see our world is afflicted with COVID. People are dying left, right, and center. Tomorrow it's going to be us. What have we sent forward? What have we prepared? You know, when you go for a journey, and you know, now it's travel is restricted to certain places, understandably. But whenever you do go for a journey, you try and prepare. You book the flights, you book a visa if you need a visa, you book hotels. You wouldn't just turn up to the place, right? There was this king who used to live in this land. There was a land where the custom was that they would go and capture a random person and make that person king. So they were, one day a random person was passing by this town and they captured him, made him the king for a year. This guy was enjoying it. He was having the life. Who wouldn't like to? It's as though they won the lottery. He was living, he was enjoying his life. And then after the year ended, they threw him to this island. And this was their custom. After the year ends, they throw this individual to the island. On the island, there's nothing. So this person is on the island. He has no food. He has nothing. He dies. Now there was this other person who was passing by. He was a wise person. They caught him. They made him the king. Now, being wise as he was, he looked around. He asked the other wise people, what's the customs here? How does it work? He realized that he will be sent to that island. So he started making provisions. He would send animals to that island. He would build a farm. He would build a house. Come the end of the year, he is banished to this island. He has a lovely life because he's prepared. As is the akhirah. فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. The best of provisions, as Imam Ali says, is that of godliness, of God consciousness. That you wouldn't go for a journey without preparing. What about the greatest journey? We talk about the caravan of love, that of Imam Hussein. But how can we join this caravan if we haven't prepared for the hereafter? We are just living life day to day. We haven't prepared. We don't even know what resides within us. And we want to join this caravan. We want to be the companions of the Imam. But we need to prepare if we really want to. And it's a bitter journey. It's a journey that of self-discovery, which is scary initially. Where when you look within yourself, the closets, the closet of skeletons that is within us, it's one that is scary and difficult, but one that needs to be done. Many a time during our life, we act in certain ways because of our past, what's affected us. And we don't want to go within ourselves and realize and recognize, this is why I'm acting in a certain way. I'm getting angry in certain situations. I'm reacting in a certain situation. I have low self-esteem. Why? Because when I look within myself, something may have happened in the past. This is it. We need to start somewhere and we need to reflect and become better individuals. We find this in the Ahlul Bayt and their companions, that they would always reflect, they would always look within themselves. They would take some time out. The Prophet was known to meditate and take time out. Similarly, certain companions close to the Imams would do this, would have these deep conversations with the Imam, would have time out for themselves. Similarly, we need to learn from that. So as we go onto the plains of Karbala, we see certain companions, Zuhair, for example. Zuhair was known to be a lover of Uthman. What did Imam Ali do? What did Imam Hussein do, rather? Did he shun him, say, you are from those guys? No, not at all. He accepted one and all. This is the message of Hussein. Accept one and all. Zuhair would avoid Imam Hussein. Whenever Imam Hussein would stop, he would move his caravan. And whenever Imam Hussein would move, he would stop. However, it so happened that they reached a point where they were side by side. Imam Hussein sends somebody to call Zuhair. Zuhair is a bit hesitant, eventually goes. When he comes back, he's jubilant, he's happy. He tells his wife, according to certain narrations, that I am going to divorce you so that you can get married after this, because I'm going to join Al-Hussein and I'm going to die in his way. You see, these are the companions that realize what Hussein stood for. And this is something that we need to learn. What did Hussein stand for? Did he stand for us to just cry? There's a deeper message within the life of Al-Hussein, that of becoming at one with God, that of love of God, that of love of the other for the sake of God. We see this displayed on the day of Ashura by a young companion of Hussein, a young family member of Hussein, Qasim, the son of Hassan, the brother of Hussein. On the day of Ashura, this young nephew of Imam Hussein comes to him and says, "Oh Hussein, I desire to go and fight for you." Hussein asks him, "Oh Qasim, how do you see death?" He says, "I see it ahla min al-asl. I see it sweeter than honey." This is Qasim. Imam, according to certain narrations, takes off his turban. He rips it into two. He pads Qasim's chest and back with one part, perhaps because he didn't have the armor. He then puts the other on his head. He sends Qasim onto the battlefield. Umar Asad tells one of his commanders, "Go and kill this young child." This commander says, "No, I will send one of my sons to go and kill him." Hussein and Abbas are standing on the hill. They see Qasim. This young person is fighting. This commander's son comes. He kills him and sends him to hell. Another son of the commander comes. Qasim kills him and sends him to hell. Another son comes. Qasim kills him. The commander gets enraged. He goes on to the battlefield. Hussein looks to the skies and calls out to Allah, "Oh Allah, help Qasim." Qasim kills this commander. Umar Asad shouts out, "Enough! Surround him! Kill him!" They all surround him and they start striking him. One of the riders rides on Qasim and rips him open. Qasim shouts out to his uncle, "Oh uncle, come to me." Imam Hussein, according to the narrations, he goes into the battlefield like a ferocious lion. He fights them off and he looks at his young nephew, trodden upon by horses, injured from different angles. He calls out to Allah and he thanks Allah for giving him the opportunity of giving his nephew to sacrifice. Ala la'natullahi ala al-qawmi al-zalimin. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Ahsan Shaykhna, thank you very much for another lecture and a beautiful recitation of the Maqdal. And now is the audience's opportunity to pose your questions to Samahat Sheikh. It's not too late. You can put them online by following the Menti link and post them confidentially. And Sheikhna, the first question here is, if we all have our own journeys, is it right if I am disenfranchised with Islam to leave it and start a journey within another religion?
We all have our own journeys, and if somebody gets disenfranchised, and the thing to note is they may not get disenfranchised with Islam as such, because if you look at Islam, right, Ibrahim is referred to in the Quran as being Muslim, right? Person who submits to God. And we see this in many religions. We see this goodness in many religions. What that person is getting disenfranchised with is a certain version of Islam, a certain understanding of Islam. And yes, by all means, if that person is genuine and honest, Allah will guide them to a higher version and a better version of Islam, an Islam that is in accordance with the Ahlul Bayt, the Prophet and his companions. So it's definitely, if you are disenfranchised with Islam, the thing is not to fill yourself with hate against individuals or to fill yourself with hopelessness. Rather, go genuinely, like the companions did, and seek for a better understanding of Islam, or if for a better understanding of truth. Because in questioning, you will realize and you will come to a higher understanding. If you're wrong, you'll be corrected. If you're right, it will strengthen you. So definitely keep on searching. But very important is have an open mind and an open heart. Because sometimes we get disenfranchised. Oh, a certain Maulana said something. I hate all Maulanas or all scholars. So just because of someone's experience, right? Doesn't mean that if somebody does something or an understanding of something is doesn't choke with you, that all understandings or all individuals are like that. Be genuine and search for the sake of God.
Ahsan Shaykhna. Next question here. In the Battle of Badr, was there really thousands of angels with the companions as the Quran said?
Yeah, the Quran mentions that there were angels that were accompanying the companions and the Prophet, and Allah does send His help. The thing to note is that the biggest thing that we can do, and angels is a huge discussion. What are angels? Angelology, something for an entire series in and of itself. The Quran does mention that there were angels that were there helping the Prophet. Sometimes our mentality and our outlook to certain situations allows the universe to accommodate us. So change starts with ourselves, and once we do that, everything else, and God sends His help in whatever way it may be.
Ahsan Shaykhna, thank you. Next question here. In your opinion, was Abu Bakr ever a really close companion of Prophet Muhammad? Did he spend his wealth to free Bilal? Did he travel on Hijrah with the Prophet and be in the cave with him?
Yeah, it's not my opinion, it's history. He did do many things with the Prophet. He traveled with the Prophet. He spent his money in freeing slaves for the sake of the Prophet. The Prophet told him to do so. And the Quran mentions about the incident of the cave, إِذْ هُمْ الثَّانِيَ اثْنَيْنِ إِذْ هُمَا بِالْغَارِ. So history does say that he was proximate to the Prophet and he was close to the Prophet at the time of the Prophet. Doesn't mean that we can't criticize anybody's action, but yes, definitely at the time of the Prophet he was somebody who was very close to him.
Ahsan Shaykhna. Next question. If Ahlul Bayt have ilm al-ghaib, why did Imam Ali accept arbitration with Muawiyah and the Imam, so I think Imam Hassan, have a peace treaty knowing Karbala could have been changed if there was a further war?
As mentioned, we answered a similar question yesterday in the last lecture. Firstly, the whole notion of ilm al-ghaib is something that we need to look at and revisit. What is ilm al-ghaib? To what extent do the Ahlul Bayt have ilm al-ghaib? There are certain things, as the Quran says, that nobody knows except Allah and those who have bestowed with knowledge. But there are certain elements that nobody would know, because then they would become like God, right? So the ilm al-ghaib is something that we need to discuss and have a deep discussion on. But again, as mentioned yesterday, there was a system that God has created. There is a system that God has created of cause and effect. And the Imams, the Ahlul Bayt, were people who follow that system, who are within that system. It's not like if the Imams have all this power, then if they were to fall off a cliff, then they would be saved. It doesn't make sense, because God has created a certain system that follows certain laws, physical laws and other laws. And hence, the Imams did the best they could to avoid bloodshed in the capacity and in the ability that they could.
Ahsan Shaykhna. Next question. If Abu Sufyan was forced to become Muslim, isn't that in opposition to no compulsion in religion?
So he still had the option of not being a Muslim. So that still stood. And he went back to Makkah. He still had the opportunity. And in fact, the Prophet respected his position. In fact, one of the things was that he said that anybody who enters the house of Abu Sufyan is safe, right? In fact, there's also the notion of mu'allifatul qulub, which certain individuals who are close or high up in the Quraysh, they were bestowed with money, or they were bestowed with position. The Prophet never forced him to accept Islam. He always had that option of not accepting Islam. In fact, certain narrations mention that Abu Sufyan, they asked him, and he told them that, give me till tomorrow. He said, don't put me on the spot, give me till tomorrow. And then he himself accepted it.
Ahsan Shaykhna. Next question. If it is not right to shut down dissenting voices, then why do some Shia majority countries do this and then claim to be the voice of Shiaism in the world?
You need to ask them. We can have a Zoom call with them and we can ask them. It's universal. You look at different countries claiming to represent different religions and not following practices of this or that religion, or shutting down dissent. Again, it's a very tricky situation politically, especially in today's times. And definitely there are certain ethics that need to be followed, certain ways of following them. So why they do it, and whilst claiming to be Shias or representing Shiism, is something that they need to be asked. What we can say is, did the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt do that? Majority of the time, no, they reciprocated with goodness. This is really what brings about a community that flourishes, to have diversity. Look at, over here in the UK, we can have question time where we can quiz the Prime Minister and different parties, right? And by engaging in that process, we're able to bring about lots of good. People's ideas can change. Prime ministers can pledge to do certain things. So there's goodness in having dissent to a certain level. Of course, if there's chaos and the people burning down buildings, there need to be also certain limits and red lines.
Sant Shaykhna. Next question. Is it true that after Karbala, Yazid had regret and tried to do Tawbah, but Allah didn't let him speak those words and he couldn't do it?
You see, Tawbah is when somebody genuinely wants to change and genuinely wants to get rid of that tendency. What we can see is, as the Quran mentions, that even if they were sent back to the earth whilst the fire, burning in the hell, they call out to Allah, and the Quran brings out this depiction. They're calling out to Allah that, oh Allah, give us another time, give us another opportunity that we may go back and do good. And Allah says no, because even if you do go back and do and are given another opportunity, you'll still do that same thing, because that tendency within yourself hasn't been removed. So similarly with Yazid, it seems like the tendency was not removed from within himself, from the actions after Karbala, and hence he couldn't do Tawbah.
Ahsan Shaykhna. Next question. If in heaven, whatever we ask for, or whatever we ask Allah for will be granted to us, if somebody were to ask for forgiveness for Shima, would Allah grant this request?
It's linked to that question prior to this. Forgiveness, you can ask for forgiveness for anybody, but that person needs to change and remove that tendency within themselves. So until and unless that individual changes, but once the account is closed, it's too late to do that sometimes. So it isn't contingent on that individual asking for somebody else. It's contingent on the person who has that tendency within themselves. If they have the ability to change and are genuinely wanting to change, then Allah will forgive that person.
Ahsan Shaykhna. Next question. If I have issues with the impact of my past on myself and I can't get myself out of cycles of sadness, do you recommend any du'as or a'mal?
Firstly, sometimes we fall into this, that we need to do du'as and a'mal. If you have a past that is affecting your present, and sometimes people undergo traumatic experiences in their past, whatever it may be, violence or not, we need to look within ourselves. One of the ways that I would recommend, firstly, is to seek professional help, counselors, psychologists, etc. Dua, the notion of dua and dhikr, isn't only the moving of the tongue. It's actually action that we take. So when we recite in Ramadan, oh Allah, clothe the unclothed and feed the hungry, etc. By moving our tongues, not going to feed them. By us actually going and feeding them is the actual dua. Likewise, we come to ourselves, if we have issues in our past that is affecting our now, because of what may have happened, traumatic or whatever, by not addressing those things, by just reciting something, won't necessarily help. I'm not saying it won't always help. At times it may help. But what we need to do primarily is to actually seek professional help, counseling or whatever, or even take some time out and meditate if it's not something so traumatic. Take time out and meditate. And definitely, adhkar, mentioning God, du'as, all of these things help, and they have an impact on us. So even something simple like taking some time out and reciting La ilaha illallah, but make sure you sit in a nice quiet place with no distractions, and mention the name of Allah. Mention this dhikr in your silence, and inshallah Allah will open up the ways.
Ahsan Shaykhna. Next question. In your opinion, are all forms of azadari acceptable before Allah?
All forms of azadari, we need to define what azadari is. Azadari, as we know, is something linguistically a Persian sort of word, that which frees us. So is this act or that act something that frees us, makes us like whole, a free person? Does it make us closer to the message of Imam Hussein? Does it give the message of Imam Hussein? We see certain actions which are inconsistent with the message of Imam Hussein, or inconsistent in giving the message of Imam Hussein. For some, azadari is giving a bottle of water to somebody. We shouldn't look down at that individual. For some, azadari is hitting their chest, right? Again, we shouldn't look down at that individual. So long as we aren't going out and going beyond certain red lines of giving a bad image to Islam and to the message of Imam Hussein, by all means, do whatever you want. But of course, again, the ethics, the ways to do certain things. I mean, you search today at Google, azadari, what comes up? A man cutting a young child, or you search Karbala or Muharram or Hussein. People look at it and say, what barbarians are these, right? That's inconsistent with the message of Imam Hussein. Hence, we need to be ambassadors of Imam Hussein and give out a good message of Islam and of Imam Hussein.
Ahsan Shaykhna. Next question here. What can parents do to protect their children from this mob mentality and make them live and love for Imam Hussein?
Parents need to first start with their own selves. Sometimes we tend to think, what can we do for somebody else? But if we have that same tendency within our own selves, then it's no use reforming someone else. There's a story that a man went to, in his youth, he had all this energy and he said, I'm going to reform the whole world. As he grows older, he realizes that, I can't reform the whole world. I'm going to reform my family. And he gets very old, his white hair. He says, you know what, the only thing that I can reform is myself. And hence start with yourself. And once you start with yourself, you become an example, like in your character. People will see you doing certain things. Your children will see you acting in a certain way. Again, there are also for children, teaching them certain values, of course, by acting it out first, and also teaching them stories and all these different things of how Imam Hussein stood up. They have an impact also.
Ahsan Shaykhna. And the last question for tonight, can you suggest how we can make the message of Imam al-Hussein universal? Are we making Imam Hussein the Imam of the Shias?
Sometimes we do that, where we call others to Hussein not because he is universal, but because we are followers of Hussein. But Hussein was beyond any labels or beyond any titles as such. People who are in his army from all sorts of beliefs and all sorts of backgrounds. He was universal. How we can do that is to first acknowledge that. Secondly, be very open and accept everybody into the fold of Al-Hussein's message. And then spread his message genuinely, not because you want people to become a Shia or whatever. Send his message around as you can, in whatever capacity that you can.
Ahsan Shaykhna, thank you very much for taking the time to answer our questions. Thank you very much for another inspiring evening of conversation and lecturing. And thank you to the audience for those who have been listening and participating. May Allah, inshallah, reward you for your deeds. And with that, we would like to welcome Brother Krush for the recitation of Noha Latmiya with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وأجل إن شاء الله عظم وجلنا وجوركم وما يتقبل أعمالكم إن شاء الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. To think how cries are too extreme, there's good reason for men to scream. Our actions aren't of those insane. We weep at the dhikr of Hussein. When the guilty kills the innocent, to usurp Islam's government, should not a Muslim cry in pain? Hussein, 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 Hussein. Reflect on Hussein's flawless flame. Reflect on Yazid steeped in shame. Shall not the heart be pierced by woe when the Khalif is al-Islam's foe? What a dark, sad thought to bear. It breaks the heart, moves joys to tear. That's why our tears fall down like rain. Hussein, 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 Hussein. A heart of stone's too hard to cry. A mind that's closed won't wonder why. A foolish man is deaf and blind. A coward always stays in line. But a soul that prostrates on its face, with trembling heart seeking God's grace, won't hide from truth, can't hide the pain. Hussein, 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 Hussein. The Khalif chose vile tricks and lies. Hussein chose death, not compromise. This prophet's son would not bow down, preferring death to being bound to evil his satanic son. So with his death the Imam won. Islam's loss was Islam's gain. Hussein, 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 Hussein. What a brave and selfless deed, to give up life for Islam's creed, to sacrifice both friend and kin, to show the world Islam from sin. Are you confused which side is right? How would you stand if called to fight? Are you aware just who was slain? Hussein, 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 Hussein. Hussein, 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 Hussein. Hussein, Sayyid al-Shuhada. Hussein, 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 Hussein. Hussein, master of Karbala. The leader of the garden's youth was murdered by a drunken couth. Understand the scene, my friend. An angel murdered by a jinn who held the Ummah's reins. A womanizer half insane, condemned to death the chaste Hussein, 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 Hussein. An Nimrod in Islamic guise, a fool unveils truth mixed with lies. An Ummah fooled by sleight of hand, one raised his voice, one dared to stand. Abraham who chose the flames, rejecting falsehood's kingly claims. And Abel who opposed a Cain. Hussein, 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 Hussein. Hussein, 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 Hussein. Hussein, Sayyid al-Shuhada. Hussein, 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 Hussein. Hussein, master of Karbala. Hussein, 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 Hussein. Hussein, Sayyid al-Shuhada. Hussein, 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 Hussein. Hussein, master of Karbala. Through martyrdom gave Abbas wings. Thirst remains and grief still stings. But tears alone would slake our thirst. Tears by themselves can make things worse. Who will stand? Who will try to speak the truth, to stand, to die, to cause a tyrant's moon to wane? Hussein, 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 Hussein. Hussein, 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 Hussein. Hussein, Sayyid al-Shuhada. Hussein, 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 Hussein. Hussein, master of Karbala. Hussein, 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 Hussein. Hussein, Sayyid al-Shuhada. Hussein, 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 Hussein. Hussein, master of Karbala. Hussein, آرام جانم. حسین روح روانم. حسین آرام جانم. حسین روح روانم. السلام علیکم یا ابا عبدالله وعلى الأرواح التي هلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى أخيه أبي الفضل العباس وعلى أختي الهراء زينب برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصل اللهم على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Ahsan. Thank you very much, Brother Kouroush, for your recitation. And thank you to the audience for those who have joined us tonight and throughout these nights of Muharram. Inshallah, we look forward to joining you with Samahat to Shaykh tomorrow from 7:15. Inshallah, do not forget us from your prayers and your a'mals in these holy nights. Taqabbal Allah to you all. And inshallah, we